I believe everybody should see the screen of the MindSonar profile. And how we'll be conducting this, just very briefly, my name is Tim Hallbom, and I'm a longtime NLP trainer and one who's worked with the Meta-Programs for many, many years and taught it. With me is Jaap, Hollander, who's the creator of the MindSonar profile, and he's been developing this for many years. And
Hello.
So welcome, Jaap.
Thank you, Tim.
And Jaap is actually going to lead the presentation and be guiding it. So what you're seeing is his screen in Holland. And we thought, so we didn't talk over each other a lot. I would be asking questions, and we have a person who took the MindSonar profile. He's actually here in my office, and he did it around a specific issue. And he is in the position of starting a new business, and basically he wanted to identify his meta-programs around a question, which was, how can he really go after what he wants and create the business that he wants without getting bogged down in a lot of the technical kind of details that can steal your energy, that aren't so exciting and interesting. So he had a pretty clear context that he's working from. So he's very passionate about creating these businesses. He's somebody with a lot of skill and talent and I think effectiveness, and so he was sorting through this in a quite specific context. And again, the context is, how do I create my business, which is my dream, in without getting bogged down in a lot of technical stuff. So Jaap, maybe you can explain to us what we're seeing on the screen with the green circle up to the left and the...
Yes, are you seeing a profile here?
I am.
Okay, well that's good because I'm not. So, all right. So here, you're still seeing a profile there, right? Says MindSonar profile.
Yeah,
okay, so basically, MindSonar is an online program that somebody fills out questions, answers questions, and moves objects around. And MindSonar is looking for patterns in the answers, and the kinds of patterns it's looking for is meta-programs. So I always compare it to an X-ray machine for somebody's thinking. And just like with an X-ray machine, the doctor needs some interpretation to understand what's on the X-ray, and that's exactly the same with MindSonar. It takes some training to understand what the scores mean. But here we have Corey's profile. So that it always begins. So he filled out everything. This is a report. Actually, the report is much longer. So if we scroll down, you see there's a whole bunch of text here, and every single score is explained in a 30-page document, but this document, this part here, where it has all the graphs, is the most interesting for us right now. So we start again with, what was this person's question to begin with? So what is the question we're supposed to answer with this MindSonar profile? Can you say that again, Tim?
Sure. The question is, how do I pursue the creation of my business, my dreams, that I have a lot of passion for, without getting bogged down in a lot of details and technological stuff that I have to do.
Okay. All right. So if you look at the sonar picture in the upper left-hand side of the sonar diagram, you see four strong meta-programs, the four strongest meta-programs this person has in this context. Because always remember, you can have a different profile in a different situation. Everything in MindSonar, meta-programs, changes by context. So here we see four meta-programs: matching, which is, looking at what's right, what's correct, what's just, what's good. Towards, striving towards goals rather than away from problems. Internal locus of control, which is basically the idea that, you know, if I want to do it, if I think I can do it, then I can. And internal reference, which is my opinion is right. If I think this is how it is, then that's how it is.
In other words,
So,
it's who decides. Internal reference is I decide. External is I want other people to make the decision for me.
right, right. So external reference is when you're asking people, well, what do you think? You know, is this okay? Is it not okay? Well, this person doesn't do that. He's internally referenced. So those are the most, you know, the meta-programs stand out most. And then we can see values. So we can actually see literally his values under criteria, sorted. So the most important thing for him is to have free time versus working. That's an interesting, you know, top criterion for somebody starting a business. So he certainly has a lot of attention for his balance between, you know, his work and the rest of his life. And so we see, you know, important criteria like progress, understanding, growth, rewards. And if we look at the kind of criteria these are, we look at the balls. Balls are the Graves categories. And we see his most important drive, his most important motivation, his most important criteria is competition, winning, being the best. The second most important is learning, understanding, contemplating the system and seeing how things fit together. And then number 3 is security, being safe, safe in a group, safe in a, you know, an environment that takes care of you. So those are the main elements we see here. And it's interesting to see if you look at the content of the criteria, it's like greater understanding is typically a yellow criterion, and that's number 2, while progress is typically a competitive winning criterion. So it's both reflected in the words and in the categorization.
So Jaap, the circles underneath, could you explain those for everybody too?
Yeah, those are, you know, you don't have to pay too much attention to those. That's the general population. So if you want to know how rare or common a certain score is, you can see, so this person is sort of uncommonly strong, strongly oriented towards competition and winning, while he's not at all, compared to other people, strongly oriented towards, you know, power, getting respect, being seen by people, stuff like that. So that's the other circles show the sort of lower circles show the rest of the population, so to speak, the other people you encounter.
Yeah, one of the things one of our little technological glitches here is we're getting some questions, and somebody on my staff is seeing the questions, but they're not showing them on mine. I don't know if they're showing on yours. But somebody did ask, what are the Graves? Who is Graves? What's that about?
Yes, well, yeah, so there's on the website, MindSonar.info, there's a little piece on Graves. He was an American professor around the same time as teaching at the same university as Maslow, and very interested in what kind of value systems people have, and, you know, sort of theorizing that you know, humanity developed through certain value systems, and that they could still be found today in individual people, the different value systems that, you know, humanity went through, you know, through the ages. And this has later, you know, become popularized as spiral dynamics. So, and in MindSonar, we're not really measuring spiral dynamics, but we are, you know, asking somebody to categorize their criteria in those Graves categories, so we can compare their criteria with other people and with themselves also, you know, as far as they have different types of criteria. So that's what this is. So if we go back to the question, I think to build a business and not being bogged down too much by all the little details and all the nitty-gritty day-to-day long typing things and stuff. So I think it looks pretty good. So matching, looking at what's right is always good to be passionate. So an entrepreneur needs to be matching and looking what's going okay. Although it's also a way to get into things that you might not be thinking so much about what it all entails. So, for instance, you go, "Oh yes, let's do that." I feel we can do it, so we'll do it. We know it's right, and this is what we want to achieve, and everything's going great. And you might not be as sensitive for all the the work something actually involves. So a little bit more away from thinking, what do I not want, could also be useful here. If we look down here, here you see the graph here. So the bar chart. One thing.
Actually, Jaap, let me suggest let's go over what these are on the bar chart, because the people will just see haven't had an opportunity to see all.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So the red ones on the left.
So if we go over all these scores here, you see the first one, the red one, is proactive, reactive. Are you get up and go, or are you contemplating, thinking, weighing different possibilities, looking at something from different angles? So basically, somebody who thinks reactively can still be pretty active in their head, in their mind, but they're not so active motorically. So it's takes a person who thinks reactive in a certain situation more time and more information to start to actually do something. So if we continue there, that's towards away from. So are you more focused on goals, achieving goals, or more focused on, avoiding problems, solving problems? Internally, externally referenced. Do you take your own opinion most seriously, or do you listen a lot to other people, what they think? Do you find that very important? Options, procedures, that's the light blue bars. Are you more thinking in all kinds of different possibilities, or are you thinking more in step-by-step plans? So Roger Bailey, one person who did a lot with meta-programs and actually taught for our institute here in Holland a couple of times, years and years back, he always said, in business, all the money is made with procedures. Time and time delivering the same thing again in the same way. Of course, developing in that, but people have to know what they can expect from you.
So people that are more optional are looking for new ways to do things.
Absolutely.
Than streamlining what they're doing, which could also be a way to get bogged down in details, and we could ask our person about that. Because you're always trying to find a different way or better way or a new way to get details done, and you're being reactive. That could cause you to feel bogged down in many ways.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot. See, if we add all these things up, matching also an internal locus of control. If you have a high internal locus of control, you feel, it all depends on me. If I want it, then I can do it. If I think it's right, then I can make it happen. If you combine that score with the options and with the internal reference and with the reactive score, if you add all that up, you can see that somebody's, feeling very responsible, very sure that it's right, but seeing lots of different possibilities and then thinking a lot about all these different possibilities. So that looks like a, could be a time-consuming way of thinking, a time-consuming thinking style if you want to get something done. At the same time, it's still also, some very good things about it, because, if you want to start a business, knowing what your goals are, believing in yourself, seeing possibilities are all, are also important good things too. Also, thinking more globally here, that's the purple bars, is also good, to have some overview of what you're doing. Let's see, where are we? So we're about halfway through the diagram now. We see maintenance, development, change there. The red bars, the 3 red bars. Are you more focused on, maintaining things the way they are, or rather do you want to slowly, step by step, gradually develop them, or do you want to radically change them? Well, this person has a bit of all of 3 of those.
So let me interject. Sometimes this is being taught, Roger Bailey is taught with us too at our institute, and he calls it sameness, sameness with exception, or difference. And so
yes, I know
those words linguistically. So that's what these are the same kind of meta-programs and stuff.
Yes, they are, and they are not exactly, because there's a whole story around that. Is what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the perception of change, or are you focusing on the desire for change? And Roger used to sort of assume that those were the same. If you perceive a lot of change, that's also because you desire a lot of change. While in practice, that's not all. Sometimes just the other way around. People desire more change because they don't see enough change, or they desire more sameness because they see too much change. So we decided, we opted to choose for measuring the desire rather than the perception. Okay, so let's see. Well, so then the next one is people, activity, information. So this person's focusing more on people, people involved, what they feel, what they think, and activity, what are we doing? A little less on, what do we know, what's the information. Next one is concept structure use. Are you more thinking in principles, or more in how things hang together, or more in, practical applications? Well, this person is a little more on the practical application side. But then the next one's also interesting in today's business world. So together, proximity, solo. Do you want to do it all by yourself, or do you want to, functionally work together with other people, or do you want to really do it together as a really tightly knit team? And this person's focusing on doing it alone, solo, mostly. There's some it's not very extreme. There's a lot of proximity also, and even some together in that score. But I think that also makes for a lot of work, because you're trying to do it mostly all yourself. So it's also good to maybe cooperate a little more with other people. But then with the last 2 is past, present, future. Are you more past oriented, looking back, looking into the now, or looking forwards into the future? Well, this person's mostly focused most strongly on the present. And then sensory modalities. I think everybody who knows NLP knows those, right? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic. It's not really a meta-program, but I thought it would be handy to measure it anyway. And so this person has more like a visual kinesthetic visual strategy, and less auditory elements in it. So that's the whole picture then. And so normally, what I do, I go over this with somebody and I ask them, what do you think, which scores and which values in this profile, explain the problem you've been having, or explain, why you have had difficulty achieving a goal, or explain how you can better achieve this goal. And since this person's in the office with you, Tim, why don't you ask him that?
We are
I always
here.
like to first have them say it, and then I can always add some other things after that.
And just for the people participating, to give a more global overview of this, once we have this information, and now you have a sense of what's in here, we could do all kinds of things with it. We can help our client here predict what may come up to him as an issue, what kind of environments will support him. We can help him identify what he might want to change. Of course, with our NLP skills, we can really help change some of these things, or he's got now a way to look at things that will give him a much more targeted way of creating the changes that he might want. Now, if this were a team of people, we might share this information among the team so that they would have a deeper understanding of each other. Or you might use this, we use this in many, many ways, and we'll talk about those. But the person who took this is here, who had the question. And so, Jaap, why don't you, we could ask him, what was your experience with this?
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
When I first received the results, and I read all 33 pages, I had a challenge with myself to remember that I'd asked a specific question, but I wanted to read it as a personal evaluation. And in that regard, it was totally wrong. But then I remembered that I had asked a very specific question, and then the test was dead on, exactly where I was hanging out, which was very, of course, I reread it a couple of times and was able to apply, this information to myself in different ways in my work environment,
Yeah. So what were your insights from these results in terms of your opening question? Which meta-programs, for instance, did you find important there?
Well, I'd say the ones that were most important to me were probably the ones on the far left, the ones with the the 5, 6, 7 scores.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of them were things I already knew about myself, things that I could see myself. But the first 5 or 6 of them, were like, oh, take a back. That was difficult to hear for a second, but then I could see that's actually useful, a way to see into myself, a way to stroke myself where I need a little pat on the back, as a as a way to see, as a congratulatory system, like where it's been difficult, I could say, oh, give the difficulty permission to be difficult so you can continue on. Because, a big part of my question was, I'm stuck a lot. And so in the question, as Tim referred it, the word stuck kept coming up.
Right.
And, and it says there at the top, free time versus work. The free time is not goofing off for me. That was at work, the free time is dream space, to create my business, to be at work in a place of love and creation is what that free time means to me. Work is the technical stuff, the bogged down stuff, the stuff that I'm not good at, the stuff that I need help with.
All right.
So that kind of puts a hue of what the whole test is about. The free time at work as opposed to free time in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. So what do you think, what do you think would be most interesting? Which meta-program or which value maybe what do you think would be most interesting to change if you want to get unstuck?
Well, it's kind of hard. I guess forget what they mean by looking at just the letters.
All right.
Working as a group with some else around it, that's all by yourself.
Right. You know, I do so good working alone, and I love then to bring people in, but it does kind of drive me crazy a little bit to work together as one great big group.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's your lowest score also there.
Right.
On together, yes.
With my previous career, that was what that was all about, and so I think I'm kind of hungry to do it differently in that regard.
Yeah, so if I look at this profile, and then now I'm hearing you talk, of course, I get an even better understanding of your question. I think some opportunities for change. Although I have to say, there's a lot of great. Let me stress that there's also a lot of great entrepreneurial aspects to this profile. It's the matching, the global, the towards, the internal reference are all typically meta programs you find in good entrepreneurs. But I think in today's situation, where things tend to be pretty more complex than they used to be in the past, I think working together with people, maybe not as a really close-knit family, but more as professionals supporting each other when needed and not when not needed, could be a step forward here. Finding strategic partners for your business who can also help you with some of the things you get stuck in if you do them all by yourself. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I think you sometimes you might be thinking pretty long about certain things, looking at them from a lot of different angles and perspectives, and pros and cons, and and especially then if you think in options, if you think about a lot of pros and cons, by that time you have another option. People who think optionally, they see a lot of great possibilities on the one hand, but on the other hand, they often don't get so much done. By the time they're it's time to really finish something, they're already working on another great option, another great chance, great opportunity. So it might be interesting to sort of fix some procedures, step by step, programs about how you work. First we do this, then I do that, then I call them, then I finish this, then I do the next step, and also to limit the time you're contemplating before you actually do something. Say, well, let me get started. It's like some of these great writers, they say, well, sit down behind my desk and I go write no matter what happens, and I don't get up before I've written like 5 pages or whatever, 3 pages. So they're sort of triggering themselves to be proactive, to do something and not think about it too much. Does that make any sense to you?
Sure.
Yep, I thought it might be interesting too if you could move on to through the meta profile a little bit, and for example show the proactive versus reactive, for example, as it comes up first, and that's one.
Yeah, so we scroll down. So here we're seeing the response times, and you can see it's very this whole, you sort of see here that together proximity solo, how do I work together with other people, took relatively a very long time to decide, compared to, for instance, proactive, reactive. So there's more doubt there how I want to do this, or how do I usually do this. So this is how you can use the response times. Here we've got the summary, it's all text. So here, we look at the proactive, reactive, you see here the scores again. Only this time the average score of, I think, about 1,600, 2,000 people is projected next to it, so you can compare yourself to other people if you want to. You don't have to. You can say, well, I don't care how other people think, but if you so that usually if you work together with other people, you can expect them to be more proactive, more go-getting than you are. In this, that's what this score says. Well, this way we have all the other scores. You see here. Well, here, for instance, towards away from is pretty much the same as most other people have that divided. But if we look at internally, externally referenced, you can see that you are more internally referenced than most other people. You have a stronger feeling of, the way I see it is the right way.
Now, at the bottom of the page, too, it gives you specific information about what those meta-programs mean. So,
yes.
So a person can take and get a pretty deep understanding of this as it goes through.
Yeah, so that's it's a really complicated sort of technical feat to produce this text, but one of the reasons why we've always stuck to that and not just go purely to visual information is that it's very useful to be able to send that to people so they can study it and they can come to a coaching session or a team building session or something like that, training session, prepared.
So one of the uses for this, obviously, a great use for this would be as a coach to do this as part of your intake.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Corey to go about making the changes that he wants, of course, he could get a good NLP coach to help him with this.
Sure. So for that, together you would define the meta programs you want to change, and then, there's a whole way in which it's also part of the certification training, by the way, is, techniques for changing meta programs.
Well, and I'd like to add too that, as I reviewed this, I think he's got a lot going for him in creating what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
In an entrepreneurial way. So some of that is encouraging, I think. He's on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Big picture for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the training. The training is a 5-day program, 3 days in August, August 10, 11, 12, I believe. And then 2 more days in October after people have a chance to, they learn it, then they can integrate it. Part of the training is that they would be able to do, they have 30 free MindSonar profile keys that they can use so that they can practice with
30. Mm-hmm.
30, and so in practicing with that, then if they did it with clients getting paid for it, then they'd certainly make the money back for the training. So
yes. Mm-hmm.
We'd like to invite you to come to www.nlpca and look up the MindSonar page. There's a lot more information about the training itself. And but let's talk a little bit. As people go through this, obviously you're gonna learn how to and have an opportunity to really practice interpreting it, how you interpret it to a person, how you might work with a person around it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important too to have a really in-depth understanding of meta-programs. I think a lot of people are the master practitioners that have gone through that as part of meta-program training, as part of the master practitioner training. But this is also, I think you get it in a really deep way when you see a number of profiles and you're able to work on them in a number of different ways. I think that some of the on the website there are a number of projects that people have been doing and videos of people talking, so you can see the wide breadth of it. People are using using this for coaching, for team building, for training, for sales training, for leadership work in the Dutch Army, for example. So their uses are pretty endless. So,
yes, it's like if you have a something, an apparatus, so to speak, that you can use to measure how somebody's thinking, that can basically be used everywhere where it's important how people think. So certainly in coaching, on all the applications you mentioned. The interesting thing is also it can be really fine-tuned to a certain situation. So you can measure how people think if they are doing well, for instance, in a certain company, and then use that to attract new people who will fit in well with that company. Actually, one of our Belgian colleagues has been working with MindSonar so long with a certain company that he can already that he started even looking at people who've left that company. What are specific meta-programs and combinations and meta-programs and values combinations that they have that eventually induce them to leave that company. So there's lots and lots and lots of it. Basically, you can say if you're active in a certain area, you can usually enhance that by using MindSonar.
okay, so would you like to add anything, Jaap, before we end? I think we have another question that just came in.
Yes, maybe we can look at some questions.
One question is, it's a good question. Why would I choose to do MindSonar over something like the DISC or Myers-Briggs? And I can address that in several ways. I was certified with the DISC many years ago, and I've used it a lot of times. I think it's a great tool. The DISC and Myers-Briggs both come from Jungian types. They're quite useful. But I think one of the big advantages to MindSonar is that it uses meta-programs, which are more specific. They are very contextual. One of the challenges sometimes you get with Myers-Briggs is there's like 16 different types, and then you sort of have to fit into it. With MindSonar, with meta-programs, there are millions of possibilities, millions of combinations. So it's not a personality test. It really is in a very specific context. Often we've used meta-programs, and some of the research that Roger Bailey did that was so good is around work. And the meta-programs can be used in any context. One of the innovative uses I thought was a fellow in Germany who had a friend who had multiple sclerosis. And he tested her when she was having a good day, and then it tested her when she was having a not so good day, and he compared them. And it gave them tremendous information about what she needed to do to keep her state operating well. And you think of these kind of applications are pretty amazing. I think that the DISC and Myers-Briggs are really useful because they give you a big sort of overview, and this gives you a really specific slice of the pie.
Yeah, and also the whole idea of personality is that you cannot change it. That's what some people say. You cannot make a sensor people more intuiting or things like that. All these meta-programs we are measuring are also things we can change. So you can sort of link your profiles to certain training programs. That's, for instance, what they did in a big automobile company. When the new salespeople came in, they would compare them to good salespeople they already had in terms of their MindSonar profile, and then if they were promising but didn't really match the profile as much as they would like, then they could be trained in those areas. So everything, all meta-programs are basically changeable.
I think the other big advantage to MindSonar is that because it's online, it's not just a pen and paper kind of thing, and you get back a really nice report. I don't know if Myers-Briggs is online now or the DISC.
Yeah, I think there's some Myers-Briggs applications online.
Somebody asked another question. How could I use this in coaching high school principals to be effective instructional leaders?
Well, it's interesting question. Actually, I know somebody who does that. Well, it's not not so much in terms of instructions, but mostly high school principals as managers of their high school. Maybe that's a different question, but what I thought very interesting is, this person has been a high school principal himself, so he knows what's happening, with high school principals. And so what he does, he has them, fill out their MindSonar, and he has their profile, and then he says, well, before you start talking, let me predict what kind of problems you have. And he can sort of spot on exactly predict their problems based on their MindSonar profile.
Yeah.
So that's sort of interesting.
That's really interesting. But in response to this specific question, how can I use this in coaching high school principals to be effective instructional leaders, to where all students are lead? If you worked with a number of high school principals, you could begin to predict where they're going to be effective in supporting learning and what might get in their way. So.
Yeah. So, for instance, if we were looking at the profile of one of those people, you could say if they're very towards and matching, for instance. And so for instance, I had this one instructor, was a yoga instructor, and she was even a bit more, scored even a bit higher on towards. And she was teaching stress management courses. So all these managers came in, and employees for their stress management course. Well, of course, if you want to manage your stress, it's basically an away from thing, right? So you're not there to relax, but you're there to control your stress. And then she, from a sort of a matching towards point of view, would sort of start singing and praising the delights of relaxation. These people would go, well, I didn't come here to relax. I came here to manage my stress. So we actually taught her to start her seminars in more of an away from manner, like explaining how terrible it is to have stress and all the negative effects of stress, and people go, yes, yes, yes. And then when she had this rapport with these people, continue with the good things of relaxation.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah. Another question just came in. How does a person develop or form their meta-programs? And why are they different in different contexts? And a couple of answers to that. Meta-programs are formed through our beliefs, through imprint experiences, through our learnings. We learn them from our parents. Sometimes we learn them in reaction to our parents, to not be like them. So we acquire them as we're growing up. And they're the ways they're the filters we see the world through. And that's how we sort information and how we make experience. And the second part, why do they change in different contexts, is that whenever everything is, in a sense, based on context. If you're in one situation, it's going to be often very different than another situation. You're going to be addressing different elements. If you think about it, if you're at a candlelight dinner with somebody you love, you're going to be paying attention to really different things than if you're skiing. And so I think those kind of where your attention's going, and that makes a big difference. And the question is, are meta-programs difficult to change? And how long does it take to change them? It would depend, but you can often do belief changes. You can use NLP techniques like submodalities to change them, sometimes very rapidly. I had somebody that was very externally referenced in a health situation, and whatever the doctor or nurse said, she thought she totally took it in as truth, even though it didn't quite feel right. And we were able to change that with submodalities in just a few minutes. So sometimes you can change them quite rapidly. So another question: once you've taken the test, once you've taken the training and you're certified, is there a cost per test, or is it ours to use?
Yes, there's a cost.
There is a cost. There are 30 initial ones that are free, and then after that, the cost is, it's based on the euro. At the moment it's 50 euro. Later that may be changing to 60. Good news is, if you're in America, the euro is now down to $1.06.
Yeah, so maybe we should switch to dollars here.
That's pretty comparable to other significant profiles like this. And usually the way people do it, if you're a coach, you'd wrap it into a session. So if I were going to work with the gentleman who took the test that you just saw, I'd probably wrap that into a coach session, maybe have a special intake session that was an extra hour long to go over things with him, and it would just be included in that price. So that's typically the way that's used. Of course, if it's a company, the test is usually considered really reasonable, because it's what people are really buying is your interpretation and your work with them, not just the test. So I don't think people go out and buy the test and just take it and kind of let it go at that. It's really collaborating with a coach or a consultant on it that makes it, that gives it the really deep value for people. Okay, so we'd love to have you join us if you're interested in this program. I think, for me, it's one of those things in NLP that's kind of a no-brainer to do, because it's so useful. It gives you kind of instant credibility. It gives you something to coach around. It gives you something, a window into somebody's thinking process. It gives you something with credibility to address a company with, where there are lots of examples of how it's been successful in the past. We'll be doing the training, this very first one, in Salt Lake City starting on August 10 through 12, and Jaap will be conducting that. The second module will be October 20 through 21, and I'll be conducting that one. And but we're doing a small one to begin with, because we want everybody that's certified to be really good at it, so that as we launch this, it'll really create some success. So we're going to do it actually in our offices. The group size is going to be limited, so if you're interested, please let us know right away, because if you wait, it may be already full. So the cost of training is only $1,500, and as I said, for training, that's pretty reasonable. If it was just the training, but it gives you a tool that you can sell and make money from, and as well as do good in the world with. So I think that going through this program will really give you an in-depth and worthwhile experience. So please visit our website.
And we have some people so there's a lot of people using it in the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany too, and we just recently Czechoslovakia started with it, and now the United States. And today I received an email from somebody who wants to do it in Japan. So what I really hope is to develop an international MindSonar community where you can also exchange ideas. Somebody in Czechoslovakia may come up with a nice project for schools that somebody in the United States might say, oh, we could do that here. So I really hope to get that kind of exchange going in the next couple of years.
Okay, there's one final question. Somebody said, what kind of people or population are included in the norm groups?
Yes, okay, so actually it's about time that we should recalculate that, because I think right now we have about 7,000 or 8,000 people in our database. But here, the last page of the report has the demographic information. I think, can you see it, Tim? The demographic information. So it explains how many men, how many women, which age groups, marital status, and education level. So you have a pretty good overview of who was used for this norm group. Although I have to say, in MindSonar, these norm groups are just sort of an afterthought. The most important thing is, you comparing you with yourself, and not so much with other people. But we do add in, this information because we have it, and it's sometimes interesting to see how you compare to other people in terms of what might happen if you interact with most other people. But usually that's not a very important factor in the interpretation.
Now, where it could be important is if you did the profile with a specific group and then use that as a comparator, finding the most effective people in that group and what's going on with them.
Right, but there you don't use the whole population as a comparison, but just some, specific experts who are very good at something, for instance.
Yeah.
We have some
research validating a lot of this. Is that on the website?
No. It's in the material of the. Maybe I should put it on the website one day. I'm still sort of developing it, but yeah, we've done some research, especially validating it and calculating the Cronbach's alpha and increasing the Cronbach's alpha by changing the questions, and increasing the validity by changing the questions, and dropping questions, adding questions, stuff like that. We've been at it for a long time, for about, I think, 15 years.
Well, I'm just realizing our time is just about up, so I want to thank everybody for participating. Please visit our website, www.nlpca.com, and look for the MindSonar page. You can also go to mindsonar.info, www.mindsonar.info, and you'll be able to read about some of the famous projects that have been done and how it's being used, and you get lots and lots of ideas. So again, thank you for participating. If you have any further questions, please you can contact me through the NLP Institute of California, www.nlpca. Just ask for Tim, and I'll be happy to interact with you. So again, thank you all. Thank you, Jaap. Thank you for your being here with your test.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim, and see you in Utah in August.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to it. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.